What is it that drives us to have such a lust for entertainment, which features blood and death in our movies, our television, theatre, books and gaming? And what does it all have to do with William Shakespeare? Hello, I'm Mike Bain from Christian Voice New Zealand, and I hope that you'll join me as we look for the answers, as we view today's culture through the lens of the Bible. The first recorded instance of mankind's lust for blood and death can be found very early in the Holy Bible. In the book of Genesis, this is where you can read about where Cain took the life of his brother Abel in an act of jealousy for God's favour. Now, oddly, the Bible contains many stories of death, the slaughter of nations, murder, manslaughter, and of course there are the graphic descriptions surrounding and leading up to the death of Jesus Christ. And yet one of the commandments God handed down to Moses as a part of the 10 Commandments can be found in Exodus chapter 20 verse 13. Now let me quote verbatim from the King James Version. It's pretty simple. Thou shalt not kill. Pretty straightforward, but as time goes on, words and meanings get changed, and centuries later we went from thou shalt not kill to the New King James Version and many modern versions to you must not commit murder. Well, possibly not a lot of difference, but then what is murder? Since then, mankind has defined murder in various degrees, first, second, third, and then of course manslaughter, but in the end taking the life of another is to kill them. And it wouldn't be right to miss an opportunity for me, particularly, to suggest that no matter how you dress it up by calling it a medical procedure, abortion is taking a life, it's killing a child. But I'm not here today to speak about abortion, but about our intrinsic lust for blood and guts in our entertainment. Why is it that we flock to the movies to see the latest horror, even James Bond, Rambo, or Terminator movie? I think I might be showing my age, but you get the idea, huh? Think about what those who walked the earth before us, but ever since the slaying of Abel, we've had this continuing lust for the demise of others. Think about during the times of the Roman Empire, people crowded into the Colosseum to watch the latest group of Christians fed to the lions, or at the gladiatorial contest where the emperor was always urged by the crowd to signal death with a thumbs down. You know, I was watching Britain's Got Talent the other night and the audience were reacting in a similar way, but in this case it was urging the judges to press a bell. In medieval England, they crowded into the market square in towns across the country to watch others burned at the stake, even watching their leaders lose their heads by guillotine or the axe. And if Hollywood is anything to be believed, even at the turn of the last century, a hanging or a shootout, that was a crowd magnet. But are we any different in our lust today? We just can't help ourselves as we fulfill this desire from the comfort of our lounge or from the seat of the theatre. Now, my reason for discussing this topic was sparked by a new production opening at the UK's Royal Shakespeare Company in Stratford-upon-Avon. It was called Titus Andronicus. Shakespeare wrote Titus Andronicus back in 1591, 1592, well, look, way long before Winston Peters was born. Well, Titus Andronicus, it's an absolute story of violence, vengeance. Titus, a general from Rome, returns from the wars against the Goths with their queen Tamora and her sons. They're all held as captives. I mentioned what passed for entertainment in those times in England, so it goes without saying that when Shakespeare wrote his play, it would have been related to the times and the demands of the audiences in those days, very similar to today. But the story contains violence and blood and has certainly challenged its producer, Max Webster, as he's had to figure out how to stage no fewer than 27 different acts of on-stage violence, from punches through to limbs being lopped off and tongues being cut out. Now, Webster concedes there's blood, body parts and gore, buckets of it to satisfy the audiences, but his issue was how to cope with it as stagehands with a squeegee between scenes. Well, it's not good theatre. So Webster had made a sort of a wet room on stage. It's got a drainage system and an abattoir hook. My question, though, is why do theatre goers, why would they pay to see such a production? And what is it that drives normal people like you and I to pay money or watch it in the comfort of our own homes? Something remotely similar. Now, Shakespeare's works of plays and sonnets, they included tragedies like Hamlet, Macbeth, and Romeo and Juliet, comedies such as a Midsummer Night's Dream and the Twelfth Night, and the historical plays like Henry. And yet here we are. We have Titus Andronicus, regarded as one of the most horrific, bloodiest and violent plays of all time. Again, why would anyone want to view it, especially when I read it's so graphic? People in the audience, they faint. It's a question that partly motivated actor Russell Beale to do Titus. In an interview with the Guardian newspaper in England, he says, "I don't understand the violence. I don't understand why, as an audience, we feel excited, stimulated, challenged by its so relentless." When Webster, the director, the producer, was asked about audiences' lust for blood, he was unsure as Russell Beale. The truth is, he says, "I don't know. But there is a lust to watch violence on stage. It's a basic human urge." Now, Webster explained you might even say we're addicted to the adrenaline shot that we get from such emotionally ringing extreme forms of entertainment. Research shows that the blood-pumping, heart-racing high we get from fear is as close to the pleasurable body experience of excitement. From the high body count of fantasy shows like Game of Thrones and House of the Dragon to the dystopian chills of Squid Game to the seemingly endless appetite for the torture porn movies of the Saw franchise, much of our creative output would make first-century dystopian playwright Seneca smack his lips in approval. But beyond the potential physical thrills, why are we so drawn to watching such violent content? Webster wonders if it's a form of safe outlet for our innate human darkness. And a common theory as to why we enjoy the terrors of a horror movie or the bleakness of a dystopian novel is just this, that such fictional outings are a secure way for us to rehearse terrible acts, without ever having to experience those in real life. And why is that? Webster again explains, maybe it's so we don't have to do violence in our own lives. We all have these weird, dark, turbulent fantasies that we don't talk about because they're not socially acceptable. So maybe seeing it on the stage is an escape or a relief. The academics Haiyang Yang and Guangxi Zhang confirmed Webster's theory, sharing their research in the Harvard Business Review. They found that horror entertainment may help us safely satisfy our curiosity about the dark side of the human psyche. As inherently curious species, many of us are fascinated by what our own kind is capable of. Observing storylines in which actors must confront the worst parts of themselves serves as a pseudo-character study of the darkest parts of the human condition. So there you have it. Do you agree with Webster that because we don't have violence in our life, we have to create it in some fantastical way? Or is it that we seek violence as entertainment to satisfy our own curiosity as to how far mankind can go? Now, when I first came upon this article about Titus Andronicus, I know it made me think about why I watched certain movies and read certain books. Well, how about you? Can you recall how we started? It was really with the spilling of the blood when Cain killed Abel. Or Abel killed Cain. We can all be pious in today's society and condemn violence in public, but it's when we get into the darkness of a theatre, behind closed doors, we actually condone violence, violent acts. But what are we really doing is satisfying our lust, our desires, and we pay for the satisfaction, this high that we get, and call it entertainment. "You must not kill" was the word from God. And yet here we are rejoicing when Rambo or Bond kills the bad guy. We don't literally pull the trigger, but sitting in the dark theatre, Are we not like the citizens in the Colosseum cheering on the gladiators and demanding the death of another? I brought all of this today to your attention, not to judge, point the finger or condemn anyone, but to bring the thoughts and research to the fore as a wake-up call. If you like, just something to ponder and consider as we go about our daily lives. But, and it's a big but, we must also refrain, hold ourselves back from opening the door of this type of entertainment. A powerful scripture to consider is Philippians 4:8. Finally, brothers and sisters, whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think about such things. Now, this verse encourages us to focus our hearts and minds on what is good and righteous, keeping away from anything that might corrupt our purity. Another excellent verse is 2 Timothy 2:22. Flee the evil desires of youth and pursue righteousness, faith, love and peace, along with those who call on the Lord out of a pure heart. Both scriptures remind us that purity is not just about avoiding sin, but actively pursuing righteousness and surrounding ourselves with goodness. As always, we thank you for watching. Please leave your comments, and as a reminder, you can subscribe on our website, christianvoicenewzealand.com, and have this video in our newsletter sent directly to you.